This is Reed's case number 641 that he sent me a couple weeks ago. This is the final report. I did file a preliminary report last week, and I urge you to take a look at it because I'm not going to review a lot of the images from that report. Briefly, these are the bite wings. He treated the upper second molar using a specific irrigation protocol. The CTs show possible sinus wall perforation of both the mesiobuccal, distobuccal, and palatal roots, with the appearance of a mucositis-like finding in the sinus. The diagnosis page shows a fractured crown, and the diagnosis was irreversible pulpitis and apical periodont. The tooth was accessed, a hyperemic pulp was observed, and the shaping and irrigation protocol initiated. In my opinion, Reed made maximum use of scarce ex-vivo research material by utilizing a different protocol in each canal within the same tooth. This is how an experimentalist should think. Briefly, in looking at his clinical notes, he used only standard needle irrigation in the mesiobuccal canal and only Triton as the irrigant. So let's look at the mesiobuccal canal independently first and address the other canals later. His instrumentation was an S1 Wave 1 Gold, which I believe has a 0.20 tip diameter and a 0.07 taper. Triton, which is a Brasseler product, was the only irrigant used. Triton is a proprietary irrigant designed to avoid the higher bleach concentrations as well as avoid the issues with mixing EDTA chlorhexidine with bleach. According to their FDA filing, the irrigants are 4% bleach together with a combination of citric acid, polyethylene glycol, ethyl alcohol, some surfactants, and sodium hydroxide. Let's start by closely examining the mesiobuccal root using that protocol. The first thing you notice is that the main canal is free from any pulpal tissue, with the exception of some tissue at the terminus, and what appears to be either the remnant of an MB2 canal or a bifidity in the apical one-third of the root. We will address these separately. In the main canal, the apparent cleanliness of the canal is apparent. Zooming into the photographic image, the amount of dental debris seems very minimal. Looking at the SEM pictures, as we zoom in, we get an even better sense of how well debrided this canal is, using only needle irrigation and Triton. We get a very consistent picture along the entire length of the canal. And as we zoom even further to examine the mineralization front and the predentin layer, we can see there is only minor predentin present and no detectable smear layer. A higher MAG examination of the mineralized front again shows no evidence of a smear layer and only minor mineralized predentin. However, what we can now detect is the presence of planktonic bacterial morphotypes interspersed nearly everywhere over the mineralization front, represented by these yellow circles. Since this tooth was vital upon entry, the only explanation I can think of that explains this finding is that there was bacterial leakage through the fracture between the last treatment and the extraction, which was 24 to 36 hours later. When you examine the mineralization front carefully, you can observe the demineralization of the remaining predentin and the beginning demineralization of the fully mineralized dentinal wall. Again, there is no evidence of pulpal remnants and no smear layer. The demineralization of the mineralized front is very mild because only very muted dentinal tubules are evident. Considering the instrumentation and irrigation protocol utilized in this canal, I would have to say further investigation of Triton as an ideal irrigant should have high priority because you're not going to find a cleaner canal than this, given that no EDTA was used and also a lower concentration of sodium hypochlorite was used. Now we'll look next at the erstwhile MB2 where it runs into the MB1 coronally. Now for sure this canal has had no instrumentation, and what we will see has to be the effect only of the Triton irrigant. And what we observe is no pulpal remnants at all and just a partially mineralized mineralization front. Some of this is, no doubt, part of the mineralized part of the predentin, perhaps just above the fully mineralized front. The last area we will examine in the mesial root is area 7, an area that probably had less exposure to the Triton than Area 8. When we zoom into it, we do see some probable pulpal remnants caked onto the wall of the dentin. But more interesting is this finding where we see most of the predentin apparently demineralized, revealing the dentinal tubules. But we also see intact odontoblast cell bodies, which are intact. So the Triton seems to have removed most of the predentin, but left the cells of the odontoblastic layer in place. In part 2 of this case report, we will review the findings from the distal buccal and palatal canals, where the endoactivator was used in conjunction with EDTA and QMix and Triton. Part 2 will be posted this weekend.